Hey guys, it's Jacqueline. I wanted to give everybody a little update. Currently we are at 45 signatures, which is awesome because that means we only need 55 more. So if you guys really want to make my day, and dear God, please want to make my day, would you mind sending a link for the petition to a friend or two on Facebook through Messenger? Now, when people send things directly to friends, there's a much higher chance that they will follow a link, that they will sign a petition. This is not just about me. Yeah, for obvious reasons. I definitely want you guys to sign for me because I just turned 40. I don't want to live the rest of my life in a public nursing care facility. Not when the national rates of abuse for disabled adults in long-term care facilities is 1 in 2. I shouldn't have to pay that price because Zuckerberg San Francisco General Hospital has refused to end its sickness hiring freezes. I can recall the 7 deaths that have happened as a direct result of understaffing. People dying in stairwells, and janitors finding their bodies 17 days after they were reported missing. Now think about that. Why did it take over 2 weeks for janitors to be able to clean the building, to sweep a stairwell, and especially in a hospital? Now, the understaffing isn't just in regards to medical staff. I know last year or the year prior, I needed a CAT scan before I went to see a doctor in one of my, I think I'm at 12 clinics right now. Soon it'll be 14. And I had to call the scheduling department and say, hey, we haven't done this, and my doctor needs it before I have the actual visit. And I was told by the very nice person I spoke to that when it comes to reservations for things like CAT scans and MRIs, it was all left to this one guy because his coworkers were both on maternity leave. They wouldn't even bring in temporary workers because, hey, they're on a hiring freeze. UCSF did a study where they tested the surfaces in the building for both MRSA and one form of hepatitis. I think it was B or C, but that I can't confirm. And they found it on 80% of the surfaces. I went 48 hours, actually over 48 hours, with a collapsed bladder. My evening nurse, there aren't a lot of situations where I think, no, it was this person's fault. And with this nurse, it's hard because a friend waited with me for about 4.5 hours. And I was calling the nurse over and over again. I was supposed to have a catheter put in my bladder. And I mean, think about it. If you couldn't pee, but your bladder just kept filling up over 2 days, yeah, it's kind of painful. And eventually the nurses just turned off my call light, at which point my friend, who was more than a little upset about the level of care I was getting, went to the nurses' station and demanded that my nurse be called, and refused to leave the nurse's station until she saw a nurse go into my room. At which point, she realized my nurse was hanging out at the nurse's station and playing a game on his phone. That hospital stay, I was also unable to lift I think it was my right arm. No, my left arm. I couldn't move my left arm for 3 days. I told nurses over and over again, because I had a special IV that had a feeding tube line and then a lab line. My nurses at night were withholding pain medication because eventually, since I couldn't hold down any food, I'd become so exhausted, or the pain would get to such a level that I'd black out. I'd go unconscious. And then at that point, they would take labs. They took labs from the wrong line, and they ignored the fact that a PICC line nurse had posted everywhere. If you take blood from the feeding tube, you will cause this patient a DVT. It will be a life-threatening DVT. My friends were very uncomfortable with the fact that I couldn't raise my arm. And they went directly to my doctors and told them what was going on. I had a DVT. It became life-threatening. My iron levels never reached the therapeutic balance. I was on double the amount of blood thinners that you would give a patient for my weight and size at the time. Mistakes are happening in that hospital all the time. And I was lucky that it didn't cost me my life. But it has to make you think, how many avoidable deaths were caused because somebody couldn't get a CT scan or an MRI in time for their doctor to see a problem? How many DVTs did patients receive and not survive because nurses were so overworked, overwhelmed, and just over it that they got burnt out and they couldn't care anymore? Because if they cared, they couldn't try to give reckless care, reckless, thoughtless, mediocre care to twice the amount of patients they should have been dealing with. San Francisco has one of the most progressive, liberal health plans for people living on the poverty level. And that's important, because if you're in another county or state, believe me, this is happening where you are too. But see, change takes a lot of voices. It starts with one, though. So please, make your voice heard. Contact a friend through Messenger today or send someone a text. And let's get those 55 other people who do not approve and will not stand for a hospital that's going to provide unsafe medicine. It won't happen in my county. At least I won't quietly allow it to happen in my county. Standing up for me, for other people in San Francisco, that's the first step to standing up for people where you are. And believe me, they need the help. Thank you guys. 55 more to go.